What's up, guys? Thank y'all for joining me today on Instinctive Addiction Archery. I'm Jeff Phillips. Got a really good one here for you today. Now, this one's by request. All right, we're going to tackle the most frequently asked question, and I get this a lot, guys. What do I need to do to be able to hunt with a 35-pound bow? Okay, a lot of guys out there that are having to shoot low poundage bows, recurves, longbows, whatever, and they're asking about an arrow option. What can I do to actually hunt with a bow that is in this weight range? Because it normally does meet state minimums. And yes, they're very effective. And of course, the faster the 35-pound bow is, the better off you're going to be. So I brought a 35-pound bow out today to do a little demo here for you and show you guys what options you could do. In other words, if you said, Jeff, okay, if you were going to hunt with this 35-pound bow here, this 35-pound ILF bow, drawing 35 pounds, what would you do to build a hunting arrow to actually be able to take game with it? Big game, deer. What would you do? Okay, well, number one, I would go as heavy FOC as I could get by with on a shaft that's going to spine out for the bow. And I don't mean ridiculous, but I'm talking somewhere around 250 to 300 grains on the front. From all the testing that I did, and guys, if you watch the arrow broadhead penetration test video series that I did, I found with a 43-pound bow that once I exceeded that 300 grains on the front and generally a 600 grain plus arrow, especially over 500 grains, the penetration was just way more. Okay, but when you're shooting a heavy arrow out of a 35-pound bow, you do not have a lot of range. You don't have a whole lot of range because trajectory comes into play. So, where is the blend? What can you really do to have still a relatively fast arrow for what it is that will really penetrate? And guys, number one, it doesn't matter what arrow you build. It does not matter what you do. With a traditional bow, if you hit, say, a deer in the square of the shoulder, in the scapula, chances are you're not going to penetrate through that and get into the vitals anyway. It's game over, okay? You got to put it behind that shoulder to get that kind of penetration, unless you're shooting some really heavy pounds and a heavy arrow setup. It's the only way that's going to happen, guys. So you want to avoid that no matter what. All right, so what I'm going to do to answer this question, and here's what the question was asked. Jeff, if you were going to hunt with a 35-pound bow, what would you do for an arrow setup? I thought, well, you know, that's a good question, and I need to do a video on that because I'm sure there's a lot of guys in that boat. All right, so what I did was I said, all right, I'm going to grab this 35-pound bow that I got and take first the arrow that I commonly shoot out of this bow, because I target shoot with this bow. I shoot 3D with it, and I'm shooting a 700 spine. All of my arrows are cut 28 inches carbon to carbon because I shoot 27-inch draw, maximum draw. I mean, that is like the max that I can possibly draw a bow. So I build my arrows 28 inches, and I brought 3 arrows out here, guys. Identical brand, all gold tip warriors, in 700, 600, and 500 spine, all cut exactly 28 inches carbon to carbon, exact same cut. They are identical cut arrows, okay? So this is going to tell us when we load the front of these arrows up, what's really going to work for a 35-pound bow, all right? So I thought, all right, if I was going to do this, number one, I would scratch the 700 spine because I think it's going to get weak once I put, because I'm only running 125 grain tip on it with a stock insert. I mean, this arrow's super light. Matter of fact, let me weigh my target arrow here, and we'll see what it weighs. And we'll weigh each arrow once we do our front loading. I've got different components that we're going to use. 317 grains. That's it. That's a 317 grain arrow. Fast and flat for a target, but not a hunting weight, okay? Not a hunting weight. So we're going to start with the 600. A 600 spine. And what I'm going to do with this 600 spine is I'm going to put a 50 grain aluminum gold tip insert in it, and a 200 grain broadhead. Now here's a VPA. These are great heads. However, if I'm shooting a low pound bow, I probably would shoot something like a Simmons, a 2-blade. I probably would shoot a sharp 2-blade head, most likely, out of a 35-pound bow. Even though these would work well, and they will, because when you get these razor sharp, these things penetrate like crazy. So yes, you could use these just fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to glue this one in right quick. And while it's cooling for just a second, we're going to take a 500. The 500, and we're going to slap a 100 grain insert in it with the same head. So we're going to have a 250 grain setup and a 300 grain setup. That's what we're going to have. We're going to run the 250 on the 600 and 300 on the 500. All wheel spine out of this bow. If a 700 with only 125 grains on the front bare shaft tunes and shoots incredibly well, you can bet these are going to. They're going to. But it will tell us how they really fly broadheads. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to put them in and we're going to shoot them. All right, so let me start. Fire my little torch up here. I'm going to glue these in and we're going to see what they do, guys. I have not tried this, but I know from experience it's going to work. It's going to work good. Gorilla Hot Melt. That's what I use. Walmart. Gorilla Hot Melt glue. Works incredibly well. Gets a bond that will not let go. That broadhead was so sharp it pushed all the way through my table. Wow. Those heads are sharp, buddy. Of course, I had them sharpened for hunting season last year. And the VPAs are very good heads. Very, very, very good heads. Here we go. 100 grain and a 500 spine. This gives us a 300 grain point weight. All right, cut all that noise off. Let this glue cool for just a second, and I'll peel the little donut off of it there. Doesn't take but just a couple of seconds. And we're going to have two hunting options. 600 spine and 500 spine. 250 on the 600, 300 on the 500. We're going to weigh these things. We're going to shoot them. And I will guarantee you, either one of these would be a really good hunting arrow for a 35-pound bow. Bet you they will. Because I have tested a lot of setups for light pound bows. And, you know, there are just so many people out there that for whatever reason have to shoot light pounds. Shoulder injuries, you name it. Various handicaps and ailments. But for number one, pure age. That's right. Pure age alone. And guys, you're going to find it. I'm 56 years old. My shoulders hurt a lot. I'll guarantee you I've been around more shooters than I can count that are in their 60s and 70s that have had to go to lightweight bows because they just can't shoot the heavy bows anymore. It's life. It's part of it. Now, there are guys that can, but there comes a time when you have to back down. And if you want to stay in the game, you want to keep doing this, you've got to adapt and you've got to get us set up with light, enjoyable pounds that you can manage and shoot incredibly accurate. And that's the key, guys. Does you no good to hunt with heavy pounds if you can't shoot the bow accurate. If you can't place a shot behind the shoulder in a hunting situation with perfection, at least the best you can. If you can't shoot like that, truly you don't need to be hunting with it. The trick, guys, with bow hunting with trad gear is to get a setup that you shoot really, really well and really consistent, and get an arrow set up that is so incredibly deadly. Like this. This broadhead is so sharp that it will literally shave your arm off. It hangs my nail. These are incredibly sharp heads. And if you think about this, the FOC on this arrow is still probably well over 20%. Well over 20%. And it's going to have a total weight. I'm going to weigh the 600 with 250 on the front and see what it actually weighs. Bam, 452 grains. 452 grains on the head. Now that's without aluminum. That would add another 20 grains probably. A wrap's going to add another 10 or 15 grains on it. So you could have a 600 spine cut 28 inches way up in the upper 500s, which is obviously more than enough arrow weight to hunt with out of a 35-pound bow. Okay, the 500 spine. People say, well, can you shoot a 500 spine out of a 35-pound bow? Well, absolutely. If it's long enough for your draw, if the arrow's long enough, and if you run enough point weight on it. Because you got to understand, 300 grains is going to weaken a shaft up really quick. 500 spine. Ooh, man, what's some FOC on this thing? Because Go Tip Warriors, even the 500 spine are only 7.3 grains per inch. So they're a light shaft. And when you load the front end up on these things, I mean, when you really load them up, boy, the FOC is amazing on this thing. They penetrate. Yes, they do. Let's see what this one weighs. 552 grains. Let me see if I'm reading this correct. This arrow is going to weigh in 100 more grains. That's all there is to it. It's going to be a 547. Get the wind, quit blowing it off here. 548 grains. 548 grains. Without aluminum or anything like that. So we're way up in the arrow weight for a 35-pound bow on this 500. But the heavy FOC is going to fly. And we're about to shoot it and show you that they will shoot just like my target arrow. All right, let's shoot these things. 317 grain target arrow. 20-yard target. Dead on, of course. Target arrows fly great. 600 spine. 250 grains on the front. See what it does. I'm curious. Dead in there. That arrow flew very, very good. I really couldn't tell much difference in the speed, but I guarantee the penetration would be crazy, double or triple. I guarantee it would. 500 with 300 grains on the front. Let's see what it does. Flew like a dart. Hit the other arrow. Okay, I didn't mean to do that. It probably hurt that first arrow. It hit my target arrow. Okay, there you have it. 3 arrows, all in a wad. No crazy flight, no anything. They all flew just alike. Complete different animals. So that tells you that you can have arrows that spread 100 grains apart in mass arrow weight, and they will still fly the same. Okay. Where the difference is your trajectory. Your trajectory is what's affected. Now, this is only a 20-yard target, okay? Max 20 yards. And they're going right there in the boiler just fine. So that tells me, okay, with a 35-pound bow, yeah, I'm going to be pretty much limited. If I wanted to hunt with a 35-pound recurve, I'm going to be limited to probably a 20-yard shot, maybe a little bit more. But I don't want to go past that. I don't, because inside of this range, these arrows are still carrying a lot of momentum. They really are. And there it is. Your typical shot. You could do whichever one you want. And I did notice, of course, I could shoot them through the graph and we would probably see somewhere around a 10 feet per second difference on a graph. So if you say, well, Jeff, which one of these would you go with? A 35-pound bow, I probably would do the 600 with 250 because it'll give you a little bit more trajectory and a little more speed. I think that's what I would go with because there's not going to be that much difference in penetration of going that much slower and that much heavier of an arrow. I really don't think it will. Now, if you want to go that route, obviously it's absolutely fine. yes, you can do it. It's perfectly fine if that's what you choose to do. I would try to find a blend because I'm thinking if you do a 600 spine, like a 28-inch arrow. Now, if you have a longer draw, then by all means, you need to go to a 500 regardless whether it's 250 on the front or what, you're going to need a 500. But if I was going to do this 28-inch arrow, what would fit me, I'd put the 250 grains on the front, and by the time you put a luminoc or a wrap under your fletchings or whatever, you're going to gain enough to get you close to the 500 total grain weight on that arrow anyway. It's going to be extreme upper fours, if anything, which is plenty. Because, guys, remember, the biggest deer that I've ever killed with a recurve, I took with a 480 grain arrow. Got a complete pass through with a Simmons Swamp Shark. Complete pass through the boiler, in and out, okay, at 32 yards. Now, yes, I was drawing 48 pounds on a bow, but still, it was a 32-yard shot, the longest shot I've ever made with a traditional bow of any kind on any animal. But I was blown away, and I was shooting a light gold tip warrior shaft with like 300 grains on the front, and it blasted through that deer. Okay, so there's not a lot of resistance when you get in the pocket. When you get in the rib area, the long area, you just don't. Ribs are not hard to shoot through with a decent point weight and a sharp broadhead. They're not, guys. They're just truly not. But shoulders are a different thing. They're completely different. Boom. That thing took it out like it was nothing. Man, it flew pretty. Oh, it flew pretty. So, there you have it. Long distance test on the flight, absolutely perfect. Perfect. And all I did was start with a target arrow, a 700 spine that was running 125 grains. Built two arrows, same exact length, two heavier spines, put 250 on one, 300 on the other. They shot identical. Other than their trajectory being just a hair different, speed being a hair different, they flew exactly the same. They did. So guys, there it is. All right, guys, so I got Daddy here, and he draws about 25, 26 inches probably. So I let him test run these arrows. And drawing even shorter, amazingly, a 700 spine with this same setup, the 200 grain heads on the stock insert, fly amazing. So I don't know what he's really drawn on this bow, but I'm going to say probably low 30s. And this arrow is flying incredible. I want you to watch this thing, how good it actually flies. So this may be an option if you're actually less than that. Here we go. All right, we're going to shoot like 25 yards here. I want you to watch the flight of this arrow. It's absolutely beautiful. Golly, kill shot all day long. Man, it was pretty. Beautiful. Okay. All right, guys, so here we are. The 500 spine with 300 grains on the front. 552 grain arrow. Heavy FOC, okay? This arrow here is not playing. Let's see what it does at 30 yards. We know that it's going to drop some because it's just a heavier arrow. So when you go to the heavier arrows, you're going to have to adjust a little bit for your trajectory. You're going to have to just get used to them, okay? But we want to see the flight and how accurate these things can be even at distance. You may not take a shot that far in the woods, but you may want to at least shoot them that far sometimes. There she is. So I hope you could see the flight, and it was perfect. I mean, the flight was absolutely dark perfect. You might even notice that as quiet as this bow is, the bow is even quieter with that arrow weight, and all bows are. Seems like when you get past 500 grains on an arrow, it just absorbs all the energy out of the limbs, and it really makes for a quiet shot. So that's why it's a really good option sometimes for a hunting arrow. So there it is, 30 yards, 552 grain arrow out of a 35-pound recurve.